Hi and welcome back to the course. In this video, we're going to be improving these things a bit by using filter functions. Instead of this iteration, which looks a bit ugly, we're going to do something which is item equals filter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to filter the list of items that is our in-memory database. And we are going to just get the one that matches the name. Now, if you've looked at the lecture in Lambda functions, we discussed briefly the filter function there, and you may be able to implement this on your own. I would recommend that you try that just now. It'll improve your learning if you try this on your own first. Now that you've done that, the solution is to say filter, and then we're going to write a lambda function for what we're going to filter by. So what we're going to do is say lambda x name equal name, and then comma items. So the filter function takes two arguments. First, a filtering function, and then the list of items that we're filtering. Essentially what's going to happen is exactly the same thing that happened in the for loop. We're going to go through each item, execute this function, and see if the item's name, x, matches the name, which is the parameter. And if it does, then we're going to return it. So how do we do it, essentially? How do we return the item? The filter function doesn't return an item. Potentially, there could be many items generated by this filter function, so it cannot possibly return a single one. However, it also doesn't return a list. It returns a filter object. And a filter object is an object that you can call a couple of methods on, such as list. And if you call the list method on this filter object, guess what? It returns a list of all the items that matched the filter function. Now, we should only have one item with a given name, so we know that this filter function will most naturally only return a single item. So instead of list, which gives us a list of items, and that would give us a list of a single item, we can use next. And that gives us the first item found by this filter function. Do notice that we can call next on this filter function, and that would give us the first item matched by this filter function. But we can call next again if there are more items, and that would give us the second item, and then the third item, and so on. In our filter function, there's only going to be one item, so we're never going to want to call next more than once. And also do remember, next can raise an error, and it can break our program if there are no items left. For example, if we don't have any items in our database, and we try to filter it looking for an item, and then we call next on that, it would break because there are no items that match the name. So what we can do is say comma none. And then what happens is that if the next function doesn't find an item, it will just return none. So that's kind of a default value there. So what does that mean? Well, that we can say return item is item. And now this item variable, which we declared up here, is going to be either the item that matches the name, or it is going to be none if none of them matched. We don't want to return 404 though, so what we'll do is use a ternary if statement, 200 if item is not none, else 404. So we're going to return a code 200 if the item is not none, and if the item was none, then we're going to return 404. Now, item is not none can be shorthanded, can be simplified to be just item. So 200 if the item exists, essentially, and if not, 404. Okay? Now, we've decided that we're normally only going to have unique names for items, so let's ensure that. So I'm going to once again use this piece of code here, and I'm going to say if the sort of next item in the filter function, so the only item that matches this name, is not none. So what does this mean? Apologies. There we go. If we found an item matching this name, and that item is not none, it means there is an item that matches the name. And if there is, we don't want to create a new item. All we want to do is return. And we're going to return a message, something like an item with name blah already exists. Make sure to spell things right. Dot format. Delete that. Name. Okay. So to recap, if we found an item and that item is not none, then we're going to return this message here. Remember, is not none can be omitted because that is the default. So if this thing here exists, that means it is not none. Then we're going to return this message. Now, what is the cause for the item already existing? And that's a bit of a trick question, because the cause for the item name already existing is not that we've added it before. This is not our application's fault. This is a bad request, because the client should have verified that this name already exists, or at least we can tell them that this name already exists, but it is their fault because they made a request with an invalid name. It's invalid because it's already in the server. So what should the code be? The HTTP status code for this message. You got it. It is 400. 400 is bad request, and that is essentially what happened here. Well, that's everything for this video. Hopefully you learned something, and we have now improved the code here to have some error control, and also to just be slightly nicer to read and to edit. Thanks for everything, and I'll see you in the very next video.